My name is Thomas, and until recently, I believed I inhabited a world of serene contentment. My life, viewed from the outside, was a portrait of success. A fulfilling career in architecture, a comfortable home nestled in a quiet, tree-lined suburb, and a marriage to a woman I adored, Amelia. We were a picture-perfect couple, or so I thought. Our 10th anniversary loomed on the horizon, a milestone I anticipated with eager enthusiasm. I had meticulously planned a surprise trip to Tuscany, envisioning romantic strolls through sun-drenched vineyards, intimate dinners under the Tuscan stars, and whispered promises of enduring love. I imagined rekindling the flame that, in my naivety, I believed burned brightly between us. I booked a charming villa, researched local restaurants, and even brushed up on my rudimentary Italian. I wanted everything to be perfect, a testament to the decade of happiness we had shared, a foundation for the many more decades to come. Amelia, however, seemed strangely preoccupied in the weeks leading up to our anniversary. She was often lost in thought, her brow furrowed in a way I hadn't seen before. She spent an inordinate amount of time on her phone, her fingers dancing across the screen as she exchanged messages with unseen correspondents. I noticed her whispering and giggling at her phone, a secretive smile playing on her lips. Initially, I dismissed it as work-related stress. Amelia was a high-powered executive, and her job often demanded long hours and intense focus. I had witnessed these periods of intense pressure before, and I tried to be understanding and supportive. I offered to take on more household chores, hoping to alleviate some of her burdens. I suggested we spend more quality time together, perhaps a quiet evening at home or a leisurely walk in the park. She appreciated my gestures, or at least she said she did, but her distant demeanor persisted. She seemed emotionally unavailable, a wall between us that I couldn't penetrate. I attributed it to the pressures of her job, telling myself that things would return to normal once her workload eased. I clung to this hope, refusing to entertain any other explanations. I was blinded by my love for her, by my unwavering belief in the strength of our bond. I was a fool, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing on the horizon, a storm that would shatter my idyllic world and leave me adrift in a sea of betrayal. The day of our anniversary arrived, and I woke with a sense of anticipation. I had a bouquet of her favorite lilies delivered to the house early in the morning, a small gesture to express my love and excitement for our upcoming trip. Amelia's reaction was lukewarm, a polite thank you, accompanied by a fleeting smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Her lack of enthusiasm puzzled me, but I chalked it up to lingering work stress. I tried to inject some levity into the situation, reminding her of our romantic getaway and the adventures that awaited us in Tuscany. She nodded absently, her gaze drifting towards her phone. Throughout the day, her preoccupation with her device continued. She was constantly checking it, responding to messages with a furtive glance around the room, as if she were afraid of being overheard. I tried to ignore it, telling myself I was being paranoid, but a nagging feeling of unease began to creep into my heart. That evening, we went out for dinner at our favorite Italian restaurant, a place that held special memories for us. I had reserved our usual table, a cozy corner booth that offered a sense of intimacy. But even in this familiar and cherished setting, Amelia remained distant and withdrawn. She barely touched her food, her attention focused on her phone, which she kept tucked under the table, occasionally glancing at it with a secretive smile. I tried to engage her in conversation, reminiscing about our early dates and the moments that had defined our relationship. She responded with monosyllabic answers, her eyes glazed over, as if she were mentally elsewhere. The romantic evening I had envisioned was turning into a hollow charade. I felt a growing sense of disconnection from Amelia, a feeling that she was slipping away from me, moving into a realm I couldn't access. I tried to shake off these unsettling thoughts, reminding myself that I was probably overreacting. But the seed of doubt had been planted, and it began to sprout in the fertile ground of my anxieties. As we drove home in silence, the weight of Amelia's detachment pressed down on me like a physical burden. I felt a growing sense of dread, a premonition that something was terribly wrong. The following days were a blur of unease and growing suspicion. Amelia's behavior became even more erratic. She was secretive, evasive, and emotionally distant. She would often disappear for hours, offering vague excuses about work meetings or errands. Her phone became an extension of her hand, a constant companion she guarded jealously. I tried to talk to her about it, to express my concerns and ask if everything was all right. But she brushed me off, dismissing my worries as unfounded. She accused me of being controlling and insecure, twisting my genuine concern into a personal attack. Her defensiveness only fueled my suspicions. I felt like I was living with a stranger, a woman I no longer recognized. The woman I had loved and trusted had vanished, replaced by someone cold and aloof. The once vibrant and loving atmosphere of our home had been replaced by a palpable tension, a thick cloud of unspoken anxieties. I started to notice subtle changes in her routine, things I had previously overlooked. She began dressing more carefully, paying extra attention to her appearance. She changed her perfume, a subtle but significant shift that made me uneasy. She started going to the gym more frequently, claiming she wanted to improve her fitness. But something about her newfound dedication felt forced, almost as if she were trying to impress someone. The thought gnawed at me, a persistent whisper in the back of my mind. I tried to suppress it, to convince myself that I was being irrational. But the more I observed Amelia's behavior, the more convinced I became that something was amiss. The idyllic world I had once inhabited was crumbling around me, piece by piece. I felt like I was standing on the edge of a precipice, peering into an abyss of uncertainty and dread. The surprise trip to Tuscany, which I had so meticulously planned, now seemed like a distant dream, a cruel reminder of the happiness that was slipping through my fingers. I knew I had to confront the situation, to uncover the truth, however painful it might be. But I was afraid of what I might find. I was afraid of losing Amelia, of shattering the illusion of our perfect life. But I also knew that I couldn't continue living in this state of uncertainty, this constant state of anxiety. The truth, however devastating, was preferable to the slow torture of suspicion and doubt. One evening, Amelia announced that she had a late work meeting. She kissed me goodbye, a perfunctory peck on the cheek, and rushed out the door. I watched her drive away, a knot of anxiety tightening in my stomach. I knew she was lying. The late work meetings had become a recurring theme, a convenient excuse for her to disappear for hours on end. I decided to follow her. I grabbed my keys and rushed out of the house, my heart pounding in my chest. I followed her car at a safe distance, my mind racing with 1,000 different scenarios. She drove to a part of town I didn't recognize, a trendy area with upscale restaurants and bars. She parked her car and walked into a dimly lit wine bar, her figure disappearing into the shadows. I parked my car across the street and waited. I watched as she met a man at the bar, a tall, well-dressed man with a confident air. They embraced, a lingering hug that sent a surge of anger through me. I watched as they sat down at a table, their heads close together, their laughter echoing through the bar. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but their body language spoke volumes. They were intimate, their touch familiar, their eyes locked in a way that left no doubt in my mind. Amelia was having an affair. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me, my legs turning to jelly. I stumbled out of my car and leaned against a nearby lamppost, gasping for air. I watched them for what felt like an eternity, my heart breaking with each passing moment. I saw the way she looked at him, the way she smiled, the way she touched his arm. It was the same look she used to give me, the same smile, the same touch. But now it was directed at another man. I felt a surge of rage, a primal urge to confront them, to expose their betrayal. But I held back. I knew that wouldn't solve anything. It would only make things worse. I needed to think clearly, to plan my next move. I drove home in a daze, my mind reeling from the shock of what I had witnessed. I couldn't believe that Amelia, the woman I had loved and trusted, could do this to me. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and utterly broken. The world I had once believed in had been shattered, replaced by a harsh reality of deceit and infidelity. Sleep was a distant impossibility that night. I lay awake in our bed, the sheets cold and empty beside me. Amelia's side undisturbed. Every happy memory we had ever shared now felt tainted. A cruel mockery of the life I thought we had. The laughter, the shared dreams, the whispered promises of forever. All of it felt like a lie. I tossed and turned, my mind replaying the scene at the wine bar over and over again. I saw their faces, their hands touching, their lips moving in silent conversation. The image was burned into my brain, a constant reminder of Amelia's betrayal. As the first rays of dawn crept through the window, I knew I couldn't stay in that house a moment longer. The walls felt like they were closing in on me, suffocating me with the weight of Amelia's deceit. I got out of bed and went downstairs, the house silent and still. I made a pot of coffee, the strong aroma filling the air, but doing little to soothe my frayed nerves. I wandered aimlessly from room to room, each one a testament to the life we had built together, a life that now felt like a hollow shell. I stopped in the living room, my gaze drawn to a framed photograph on the mantelpiece. It was a picture of Amelia and me on our wedding day, both of us beaming with joy, our eyes filled with hope and promise. I picked up the frame, my fingers tracing the outline of Amelia's face. "How could you do this to me?" I whispered, my voice cracking with emotion. I felt a surge of anger, a burning desire to lash out, to break something, to inflict pain. But I knew that wouldn't solve anything. It wouldn't bring back the life I had lost. I put the photograph back on the mantelpiece, the glass cold and unforgiving beneath my fingertips. I knew I had to confront Amelia, to demand answers, to understand why she had thrown away everything we had built together. But I also knew that I couldn't do it now. I needed time to process my emotions, to regain some semblance of control. I left the house without a word, the front door closing softly behind me. I drove aimlessly for hours, the city streets blurring into a kaleidoscope of lights and shadows. I ended up at a park near the river, a place where Amelia and I used to go for walks. I sat on a bench, watching the water flow by, the gentle rhythm a stark contrast to the turmoil within me. I spent the rest of the day there, lost in my thoughts, trying to make sense of the wreckage of my life. As the sun began to set, I knew I had to go back. I had to face Amelia, to confront the truth, however painful it might be. The drive back home was agonizing. Every mile felt like an eternity, every turn a reminder of the life I was leaving behind. The familiar streets, the houses with their neatly trimmed lawns, the children playing in the park. It all felt alien to me now, a world I no longer belonged to. As I pulled into the driveway, I saw Amelia's car parked in its usual spot. My heart pounded in my chest, a mixture of dread and anticipation. I took a deep breath and stepped out of the car, the cool evening air a welcome relief from the stifling heat of my emotions. I walked slowly towards the house, my footsteps echoing in the stillness of the night. I could see the lights on inside, casting a warm glow through the windows. For a moment, I hesitated, tempted to turn around and run away. But I knew I couldn't keep running. I had to face the truth, no matter how painful it might be. I opened the front door and stepped inside, the familiar scent of Amelia's perfume hitting me like a wave. She was sitting on the sofa in the living room, a book in her lap, but her eyes were red and swollen, as if she had been crying. She looked up as I entered, her expression a mixture of surprise and guilt. "Thomas," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "Where have you been?" "Where have I been?" I repeated, my voice thick with anger. "That's a good question, Amelia. Perhaps you should tell me where you were last night." She looked down at her hands, her fingers twisting nervously in her lap. "I had a work meeting," she mumbled, her voice barely audible. "Don't lie to me, Amelia," I said, my voice rising. I saw you with him." She looked up at me, her eyes wide with fear. I don't know what you're talking about," she stammered. "Don't insult my intelligence," I said, my voice cold and hard. "I saw you at the wine bar. I saw you with that man. I saw the way you looked at him." She finally broke down, tears streaming down her face. "I'm so sorry, Thomas," she sobbed. I didn't mean to hurt you. It just happened. Just happened. I repeated, my voice dripping with sarcasm. You've been seeing him for weeks, Amelia. Maybe even months. Don't try to tell me it was just a one-time thing. She shook her head, her body racked with sobs. I don't know how it happened, she cried. I was lonely. You were always working. He made me feel special. Special? I said, my voice filled with disgust. So you decided to throw away 10 years of marriage for a few cheap thrills with some stranger? She looked up at me, her eyes pleading for understanding. It's not like that, Thomas, she said. I love you. I never stopped loving you. But I made a mistake. I'm so sorry. Sorry, I said, my voice breaking. Sorry isn't enough, Amelia. You broke my heart. You shattered my world. And now you expect me to forgive you. She reached out to me, her hand trembling. Please, Thomas, she begged. Give me another chance. I'll make it up to you. I promise. I looked at her, my heart aching with pain. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to forgive her. But I knew I couldn't. The trust was gone, shattered beyond repair. It's over, Amelia, I said, my voice hollow and empty. We're done. The following days were a blur of pain and confusion. I moved out of the house, finding a temporary apartment in a nondescript building on the other side of town. The silence of the empty apartment was deafening, a constant reminder of my solitude. I spent my days wandering aimlessly, trying to escape the memories that haunted me at every turn. I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep, I could barely function. The world seemed to have lost its color, its vibrancy replaced by a dull, gray monotony. I tried to keep busy, throwing myself into my work, but it was no use. My mind was consumed by thoughts of Amelia, of her betrayal, of the life we had lost. I couldn't understand how she could have done this to me. We had been so happy, or so I thought. We had shared everything, our hopes, our dreams, our fears. How could she have thrown it all away for a fleeting affair with another man? The questions tormented me, gnawing at my soul. I tried to find answers to make sense of the senseless. I replayed every moment of our relationship in my mind, searching for clues I had missed, for signs of her discontent. But I found nothing. Amelia had always seemed happy, content even. She had never given me any reason to doubt her love, her loyalty. The realization that I had been living a lie, that the woman I loved had been deceiving me for months, perhaps even years, was devastating. It shattered my faith in love, in trust, in everything I had ever believed in. I felt like a fool, a naive idiot who had been blind to the truth that had been right in front of him all along. The pain was unbearable, a constant ache in my chest that radiated outwards, poisoning every aspect of my being. I couldn't escape it, no matter how hard I tried. It followed me everywhere I went, a dark shadow that clung to me relentlessly. I started drinking heavily, hoping to numb the pain, to find some respite from the torment of my thoughts. But the alcohol only made things worse. It amplified my emotions, turning my sadness into despair, my anger into rage. I would wake up in the morning with a pounding headache and a heavy heart, the memories of the previous night flooding back in a torrent of shame and regret. I knew I was self-destructing, but I couldn't stop. I was lost in a spiral of grief and anger, unable to find my way out. One evening, as I was drowning my sorrows in a dimly lit bar, I overheard a conversation at the next table. Two men were talking about a mutual acquaintance, a man named David, who had recently been through a messy divorce. His wife found out he was having an affair, one of the men said. Apparently, she got some anonymous emails with all the details. Poor guy lost everything: his wife, his kids, his job, even his house. The name David struck a chord. It was the name of the man I had seen with Amelia at the wine bar. I listened intently, my heart pounding in my chest. Who was the other woman? The other man asked. Some married woman he met at a conference, the first man replied. I don't know her name, but I heard she's a high-powered executive. Works in finance, I think. A cold shiver ran down my spine. It was her. It had to be. Amelia fit the description perfectly. She was a high-powered executive in finance, and she had recently attended a conference out of town. I felt a surge of anger, a burning rage that threatened to consume me. Amelia had not only betrayed me, she had also ruined another man's life. She had destroyed his family, his career, his reputation, and she had done it all without a second thought. I left the bar in a daze, my mind reeling from the revelation. I walked aimlessly for hours, the city streets a blur of lights and shadows. I couldn't believe the depths of Amelia's deceit. She had not only betrayed me, she had also betrayed another man, a man who had probably trusted her as much as I had. I felt a strange sense of kinship with this stranger, this man whose life had been shattered by Amelia's actions. We were both victims of her deceit, both casualties of her reckless pursuit of pleasure. As I walked, my anger began to morph into something else, something colder, something more calculated. I realized that I couldn't simply let Amelia get away with what she had done. She had to pay for her betrayal, for the pain she had inflicted on me, on David, on everyone whose lives she had touched. A plan began to form in my mind, a plan for revenge, a plan to make Amelia suffer as she had made me suffer. It was a dark and dangerous path, but I didn't care. I was consumed by a thirst for vengeance, a need to see Amelia pay for her sins. The first step was to gather information. I needed to know everything I could about David, his family, his work, his life. I started by searching online, scouring social media, news articles, anything I could find. It wasn't difficult. David, unlike me, was a public figure. He had a strong online presence, a carefully curated image of a successful businessman and family man. I learned that he had 2 young children, a boy and a girl. I saw pictures of them on his wife's Facebook page, their smiling faces a stark contrast to the pain and devastation that Amelia had brought into their lives. I learned about his career, his rise through the ranks of a prestigious law firm. I read articles about his philanthropic work, his involvement in community projects. The more I learned about David, the more I realized how much he had lost. Amelia had not only broken his heart, she had destroyed his entire world. And she had done it all without a second thought. My anger grew with each passing day, fueled by the knowledge of David's suffering. I couldn't let Amelia get away with this. She had to pay for what she had done. But I knew that simple revenge wouldn't be enough. I didn't want to hurt her physically or even emotionally. I wanted to destroy her the way she had destroyed David, the way she had destroyed me. I wanted to strip away her carefully constructed facade, to expose her for the fraud she was. I started to formulate a plan, a meticulously crafted strategy to bring Amelia down. I wouldn't stoop to her level. I wouldn't resort to violence or threats. I would be far more subtle, far more insidious. I would use her own weapons against her, her own deceit, her own ambition. I would destroy her reputation, her career, her social standing. I would isolate her from her friends, her family, everyone she held dear. I would make her life a living hell, a constant reminder of the pain she had inflicted on others. It was a cruel and heartless plan, but I didn't care. I was consumed by a thirst for vengeance, a need to see Amelia suffer the consequences of her actions. I had lost everything because of her, my love, my trust, my faith in humanity. And now it was her turn to lose everything. I started by subtly undermining Amelia's career. I knew she was ambitious, driven by a relentless desire to climb the corporate ladder. So I began to plant seeds of doubt about her competence, her integrity, her loyalty. I would casually drop hints to colleagues, clients, even competitors, suggesting that she was unreliable, that she couldn't be trusted. I would spread rumors about her personal life, about her infidelity, about her lack of morals. I was careful not to be too obvious, not to leave any trace of my involvement. I would use anonymous emails, burner phones, even public Wi-Fi hotspots to cover my tracks. I became a ghost, a whisper in the corridors of power, sowing discord and discontent wherever I went. At first, the effects were subtle. A raised eyebrow here, a whispered comment there. But gradually, the rumors began to take hold. People started to question Amelia's judgment, her decisions, her motives. Her colleagues became wary, her clients became hesitant, Her superiors became concerned. Amelia, oblivious to the source of the whispers, began to feel the pressure. She worked longer hours trying to prove herself, to regain the trust she had lost. But the harder she worked, the more isolated she became. Her colleagues distanced themselves, fearing that her tarnished reputation might rub off on them. Her clients started to take their business elsewhere, unwilling to risk their own reputations by associating with her. Amelia's once bright career began to crumble, like a sandcastle washed away by the tide. She was passed over for promotions, excluded from important meetings, and relegated to less prestigious projects. Her confidence, once unshakable, began to waver. She became withdrawn, irritable, and prone to outbursts of anger. I watched her descent with a mixture of satisfaction and regret. I knew I was hurting her, but I couldn't stop. The thirst for vengeance was too strong, the need to see her suffer too overwhelming. I had become a monster, driven by a dark and destructive force. But I didn't care. I had lost everything because of her, and now it was her turn to lose everything. My campaign of whispers and innuendo wasn't confined to Amelia's professional life. I infiltrated her social circles, subtly poisoning her relationships with her friends. I would casually mention her affair with David, emphasizing the hurt she had caused, the lives she had ruined. I would express my own pain and betrayal, painting myself as the victim, the wronged party. Amelia's friends, once sympathetic and supportive, began to distance themselves. They saw her in a new light, a light cast by the shadows of her infidelity. They questioned her character, her values, her loyalty. The invitations to social gatherings dwindled. The phone calls became less frequent. The friendly gestures disappeared. Amelia, already reeling from the setbacks in her career, found herself increasingly isolated. The friends she had relied on, the people she had confided in, were now turning their backs on her. She felt alone, abandoned, adrift in a sea of judgment and condemnation. I watched her social life unravel with a cold satisfaction. She had betrayed my trust, my love, my friendship. And now she was paying the price. She was experiencing the same isolation, the same pain, the same sense of betrayal that she had inflicted on me. But I wasn't done yet. I had one more card to play, one final act of revenge that would complete Amelia's downfall. I knew that Amelia, despite her outward confidence, was deeply insecure. She relied on the approval of others, on their admiration, on their validation. She had built her life on a foundation of appearances, a carefully crafted image of success and respectability. And I was about to shatter that image, to expose her deepest insecurities, to reveal the flawed and vulnerable woman beneath the mask. I decided to target Amelia's vanity, her carefully cultivated image. She was a beautiful woman, always impeccably dressed and groomed. She took pride in her appearance, spending hours at the gym and the salon, investing in expensive clothes and cosmetics. I knew that her beauty was a source of both confidence and vulnerability. It was a weapon she used to attract attention, to gain admiration, to manipulate others. But it was also a shield, a way to protect herself from the world, to hide her insecurities. I decided to use her beauty against her, to turn it into a source of shame and humiliation. I started by creating a fake profile on a popular dating website. I used a flattering photo of Amelia, one I had secretly taken from her social media account, and I wrote a provocative profile, highlighting her physical attributes and suggesting that she was looking for discreet encounters. I then started contacting men on the website posing as Amelia. I would engage them in suggestive conversations, sending them flirtatious messages and even explicit photos, all carefully chosen to portray Amelia in a compromising light. I also created fake social media accounts in Amelia's name, posting provocative photos and comments, creating a digital trail of infidelity and promiscuity. The rumors started to spread like wildfire. Amelia's friends, colleagues, and even acquaintances were bombarded with messages and photos, all suggesting that she was leading a double life, a life of secret affairs and illicit encounters. Amelia, initially oblivious to the online smear campaign, was horrified when she discovered the extent of the damage. She tried to defend herself, to deny the accusations, but it was no use. The evidence was overwhelming, the rumors too widespread. Her reputation was in tatters, her image irreparably damaged. She was no longer seen as the successful, sophisticated woman she had once been. She was now viewed as a liar, a cheat, a woman of loose morals. The shame and humiliation were unbearable. Amelia withdrew from the world, hiding in her apartment, afraid to face the judgment and condemnation of others. Her career was in ruins, her social life non-existent, her reputation destroyed. She had lost everything. And I, the architect of her downfall, watched from the shadows, a cold satisfaction filling my heart. The consequences of my actions were far-reaching and devastating. Amelia, once a vibrant and confident woman, was now a shadow of her former self. She lost her job, her friends, her social standing. She was ostracized by her community, labeled a homewrecker, a liar, a cheat. The weight of her shame and guilt was almost unbearable. She became withdrawn, depressed, and even contemplated suicide. The woman I had once loved, the woman I had shared my life with, was gone, replaced by a broken and despairing shell. David, the man whose life she had also ruined, suffered a similar fate. His wife left him, taking their children with her. He lost his job, his reputation, his sense of self-worth. He was left with nothing but the bitter taste of betrayal and the knowledge that his life had been irrevocably changed by Amelia's actions. The ripple effects of Amelia's infidelity and my subsequent revenge spread far and wide, touching the lives of countless people. Our families were torn apart, our friends were divided, our community was shaken. The once harmonious fabric of our lives was ripped to shreds, leaving behind a trail of pain, anger, and resentment. Even I, the architect of Amelia's downfall, was not immune to the consequences of my actions. The satisfaction I had initially felt at seeing Amelia suffer gradually gave way to a gnawing sense of guilt and emptiness. I had destroyed her, but in doing so, I had also destroyed a part of myself. The love I had once felt for her, the memories we had shared, the life we had built together, all of it was tainted now, poisoned by the bitterness of betrayal and revenge. I had become a monster, consumed by my own anger and hatred. I had crossed a line, and there was no turning back. The path I had chosen was a dark and lonely one, leading to a destination I was not sure I wanted to reach. I tried to move on with my life, to rebuild the shattered fragments of my existence. I threw myself into my work, seeking solace in the familiar routines of my profession. I tried to reconnect with old friends, to forge new relationships, to fill the void left by Amelia's absence. But it was no use. The ghost of Amelia haunted me, her memory a constant presence in my thoughts. I saw her face in the crowds, heard her voice in the wind, felt her touch in the darkness. The guilt and remorse gnawed at my soul, a relentless reminder of the pain I had caused. I had destroyed Amelia, but I had also destroyed myself. I had become a hollow shell, a man devoid of love, compassion, and empathy. I tried to find forgiveness, to absolve myself of my sins. I sought solace in religion, in therapy, in self-help books. But nothing seemed to work. The burden of my guilt was too heavy to bear. I started having nightmares, vivid and disturbing dreams in which Amelia appeared, her face pale and gaunt, her eyes filled with accusation. She would whisper my name, her voice a chilling echo of the love we had once shared. I would wake up in a cold sweat, my heart pounding in my chest, the echoes of her voice ringing in my ears. The nightmares became a recurring torment, a nightly reminder of the darkness that consumed me. I realized that I could not escape the consequences of my actions. I had sown the seeds of destruction, and now I was reaping the whirlwind. The pain I had inflicted on Amelia, on David, on everyone whose lives I had touched, had come back to haunt me, to torment me, to drive me to the brink of madness.